Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. As you can see, Ukraine every day takes the ground of the Kursk Oblast. This update was released several hours ago and Sudzha, yes, already was taken by Ukrainian army. And Ukraine starts to propel even forward to the east, not just towards north. The furthest point of the Ukrainian army advancement is the Giri village. Unfortunately, some of the Ukrainian vehicles were ambushed out there because Russia created the trap. I'm gonna show you the actual photo later in this video. But this situation shows that probably all of those villages are also under Ukrainian control. Plus, yesterday Russia had the assault vector towards Sudzha and now it is absent. Ukraine propelled forward and Russians basically decided to leave this area. Yes, Ukraine also has losses because of the Russian Lancet drones and because sometimes they are able to ambush Ukrainian vehicles, but even in Giri, Ukraine lost the vehicles but not the soldiers. And here we see the wider perspective, so not just Ukraine took Sudzha under control, but also advanced in this area towards Giri and also in Kornevo. But Russia also tries to counterattack, this time from the northeast area before they try to do it from the east directly. About Kornevo, I think it's the main target for Ukrainian armed forces and Ukraine tries to encircle it from two of the directions, from this side and also from the top. Ukraine mostly uses the high mobile vehicles, BTRs, MRAPs to move very fast. The experts of the Institute for the Study of War say that Ukraine took in 1 week more ground than Russia occupied for entire 2024. It shows how fast this special military operation by Ukrainian side is ongoing. So far, the Russian military command is unable to stop the expansion of this area. Even though around 3 days ago the Russian military affiliated channel started to say that they were able to stop the Ukrainian advancement, but basically it's fake, it's false. Ukraine still takes the ground, moving further and further or deeper and deeper. By the way, my friends, if you like the job that I do on YouTube and you are willing to support it, you may do it via Patreon. The link for my page is available in the video description just below. Thanks for adding motivation to my job and thanks for your awesome support. It is the usual picture of the Kursk Oblast nowadays, how Ukrainian soldiers take off the Russian flags, sometimes putting Ukrainian flags on the top of administrative buildings of the local villages. I think that is basically the humiliation of the Russian regime. Ukraine hit the right spot. Yes, by the way, with a big delay we have the update from the deep state military map, but it's the first day, it's the second day of intervention into Russia. Which according to the Putin's policy should never happen. You see, Putin built his reputation of the strong leader among Russians. I call him nuclear maniac, but many Russians consider him as a strong leader. And now this strong leader is unable to defend the Russian territory. I read the enemy side too, and Z bloggers are quite shocked that the Russian government is unable to act properly and to repel the Ukrainian attack. Yeah, obviously there is the resistance from the Russian army, but there is no unity or organized control of the Russian defense in the region. That's why Ukraine is so successful. The Akhmat battalion retreated somewhere far away from the front lines. Now they're in Giri. Now they try to ambush the small Ukrainian sabotage groups. The Russian regular army tries to counterattack the advancing Ukrainian forces, forming big long convoys and using kind of the old equipment available in the place. I mean the old tanks or MTLBs. Meanwhile, if you check the Russian news, they're saying almost nothing about the case. The Russian regime wants to distance from the harsh reality that their country is being taken by the other one. It shows a huge weakness of Putin. The same picture actually we saw when Prigozhin went to Moscow. The Russian Z patriots already expect that Russia would use nukes against Ukraine in case of the Russian territorial integrity is in danger. But now it's not even in danger. Actually, the territorial integrity of Russia was violated by the other country, but Putin is simply afraid and he's not competent. The Russian Defense Ministry plus Putin had been sleeping when Ukraine was preparing for this operation. And it seems like Russia will not be able to take their territories back in a close perspective. Well, the only way for them to do it is to take their forces out from Ukrainian front lines. There is the chance that Putin may follow that step, but based from the informational perspective, they don't want to speak about their territories being occupied. They want to distance from the problem, which makes the problem even worse for the Russian regime, because Ukrainian army takes the ground with every day. For example, here we have the sign of Lgov, and Lgov is not somewhere close in this area. No, here's Lgov. So maybe Ukraine sends some sort of the sabotage group to that city. And it is just 15 kilometers away from Kurchatov nuclear power plant. We know that Russia now sends some of the reinforcements to protect nuclear power plant just in case, but whether those will be enough, we'll see. So maybe after all Ukraine has some of the chances to advance to nuclear power plant. Yesterday Putin held the big meeting with defense ministers, with governors, where the question of the Kursk Oblast was just one from many others. So then Putin spoke with Kursk governor, he asked about the situation in the region, and the governor immediately started to say that the Ukrainian army advanced at least 12 kilometers deep into the Russian territory and by 40 kilometers in width, and those are the Russian figures. So Putin immediately interrupted his governor, saying, hold on, it is the competence of defense ministry, tell us more about the social stuff in your region. Putin doesn't want to tell about success of Ukrainian army advancing to the Russian territory. Except of what governor said about the Ukrainian army advancement, if you listen to what they're speaking about, you'll never understand that the topic of their conversation is the intervention into the Russian Federation. It seems like they were discussing some of the local issue of the Kursk region. For example, like flooding, some of the natural disaster, but not the intervention of the other army to the sovereign territory of the Russian Federation. Putin basically shows again that he is weak. His internal circle sees it, I mean FSB and other power branches of Russia. You may think that the Russian regime is some sort of the monolith, but not really. There are some forces who would like to take more power, and they will use any possibility. In this system, leader should not be a weak person. Also, other countries see the weakness of Putin too. For example, I'm sure that Xi Jinping is really shocked about the events. With the Kursk operation, Ukraine showed that the king is naked. All of his words about nuclear threats, that Russia is ready to strike even Washington, they was nothing. All of the possible Putin's red lines have already been crossed. Even the Russian Z community laughs about the Putin's red lines. They call those amber lines. So totally during his yesterday's meeting, Putin spent around 5 minutes speaking about the situation in Kursk. So what did he mention? An assessment of what is happening in the region's border Ukraine will be given later. The main task is now to drive out the enemy. We see that for now Russia is unable to do it and will not be able to do it for probably many weeks. Next, it is necessary to ensure reliable coverage of the border with Ukraine after the enemy is driven out to the territory outside the Russian Federation. In the world of the Russian Z Patriot, which by the way Putin propaganda has created, this situation should have never ever happened. Because Russia is strong, it has the best army, it has nuclear weaponry. But the reality looks different from the Russian propaganda. We see that Ukraine dared to test this Russian system and Russia failed. It appeared that you can easily take the territory of the nuclear superpower and Putin will just mumble on the camera, but Dmitry Medvedev will nuke the enemies, everyone, but just on Twitter and Telegram. Alright, what is next? The FSB together with the Russian Guard must ensure the counter-operation regime as well as the effective fight against the enemy sabotage group and reconnaissance groups. Alright, the first three topics are about nothing really. Civilian agencies are obligated to ensure the supply of security forces with everything they need. Industry, transport, construction, medicine. He basically speaks about some of the civilian infrastructure and civilian hospitals which should be used now to support the military operation. This is the competence of the governor of the Kursk Oblast, by the way. The enemy is seeking to improve its negotiating positions in the future, but we have nothing to talk about with Kiev. So again, Putin shows that he doesn't want really to negotiate with Ukraine. He wants to take Ukrainian territory, that's it. The Russian peace talks demands are based on capitulation of Ukraine. They want Ukraine to give up its territory, and later on Russia will attack Ukraine once again. The Russian regime and Putin personally shouldn't be trusted. And he also mentioned that the invasion of the armed forces of Ukraine of the Kursk region pushes the military goal of stopping the advancement of the Russian army in Ukraine, as well as striking a blow to domestic political situation in Russia. Here I may agree with Putin. Definitely it could be the goal of this operation which Ukraine has started. But how Putin is going to cope with that, no one knows. So far the defense of the Kursk region is just disorganized. All of the situation shows the real issues within the Russian system. The governor of Belgorod Oblast asked the Russian citizens to leave the bordering areas with Ukraine. He said that administration cannot guarantee the security of the lives of the citizens. How is that so Russia cannot guarantee the security? Well, I guess that the Russian army is used for offense, not for defense. By the time the most capable part of the Russian army is in Ukraine, no one is able to protect the Russian citizens. There are lots of the cases of the friendly fire reported in the Kursk region. For example, this is the Russian Msta air self-propelled artillery system, which was hit by the Russian K-52 helicopter, and this is the aftermath of it. Well, actually it was the convoy, there were also supply trucks, and you may understand what happened to those. The general commander of the Ukrainian armed forces, Sursky, reported that Ukraine has already taken around 1,000 square kilometers of the Russian territory. Well, honestly guys, it's hard to prove, but based on the most optimistic maps I saw, it's around 400 square kilometers, not 1000. So probably here the Ukrainian officials a little over-exaggerate. But what is interesting about the Ukrainian army tactics, here you may see that it's the central part of Sucha. Yes, Ukraine took that settlement under control. It's the city actually. However, in the central part you may see the small buildings, but all of those are fine. They're not being destroyed by the aerial strikes or by artillery systems. Well, maybe there are just some of the traces on asphalt from the tanks, that's it. But if you check out every Ukrainian village, every Ukrainian town or city which was taken by the Russian army or occupied, well, those are completely demolished. That's the difference really, but after all, I would recommend for locals to leave this area because Russia will kaboom everything for sure, in attempt to get rid of Ukrainian army. So civilians, Russian civilians this time will suffer because of the Russian army, and Russian army will obviously blame Ukraine for that. Guys, and let's just compare how Ukrainians protested against the Russian military intervention into their cities, how they gathered on the squares. Yes, they didn't have the weaponry to respond, but they were really against the intervention forces. Do we see such a picture in the Russian villages, towns, and Sucha city, for example, is kind of the big one? Nope, so maybe after all there's nothing to defend. But what Russians may do is to organize those kind of the cringy meetings. By the way, there are not many people presented. So what they're doing, they're calling to put the coordinates for the Russian ICBMs to hit directly Washington and other important cities of the United States of America. So they're calling on Washington, we are going to nuke Washington. It's double cringe to watch because we understand that Russia is unable to defend its Kursk Oblast. By the way, guys, it's not the first time they're walking like that. I guess I already showed you those clowns in my videos. The coordinates of the Russian ICBMs has already been set, maybe also to Washington, but mainly towards the main military bases. As well as for American missiles, Moscow is the target. Here we have the satellite image of the border checkpoint between Ukraine and Russia in Sucha district. It's completely demolished. By the way, there are lots of the Russian conscripts were imprisoned by Ukraine. And this is the gas measuring equipment station, which was also kaboomed, so the administrative building plus some of the pipelines, as you may see. So the Sucha gas terminal is no-go without heavy maintenance. By the way, hopefully you can see here there are some of the trenches for the Russian soldiers which didn't play the big role. Unfortunately, our allies are still limiting Ukraine in using the long-range weaponry on the Russian territory. Yesterday, the Telegraph wrote the article that UK is still against using the Storm Shadow missiles on the Russian territory, for example, in Kursk Oblast. The same goes with the ATACMS missiles permission from the United States. It's kind of strange because I think that everyone understands that Putin is bluffing. His territory has been attacked and there is no proactive action from the Russian army or from the Russian military command or from Putin himself. They want to silence the event, that's it. So with Storm Shadow and ATACMS or not, but Putin will not respond. And it seems like for the first time officially in such a big meeting with the military commanders and Zelensky, it was announced that Ukraine definitely went to the Russian territory. Guys, I promised you to show the Ukrainian convoy in Kursk Oblast, several of the BTRs which were unfortunately ambushed. One of the BTRs even was captured by the Russian army. The full video is as usual available on my Telegram channel, so Russians just ambushed Ukrainian vehicles. It was the reconnaissance mission by Ukrainian army which unfortunately failed, so there is no any operation without losses. But Russians already present it as the big victory. Yes, as you probably know, there was the interview of Donald Trump to Elon Musk. Well, there is nothing new that I've heard, the standard Trump's rhetorics, that's it. What I don't like about that rhetorics that Trump blames Biden for the war in Ukraine, not Putin, Biden. He said that because of the Biden's action, Putin started the war in Ukraine. He also said that Ukraine shouldn't be promised a NATO membership. It is a standard Russian rhetorics. They say that Ukraine signed some sort of the association with NATO and it was the cause for Russia to attack. But in fact, the cause for Russia to attack Ukraine is the ambition of the Russian dictator to restore the Soviet Union. That's it. They don't care about NATO, really. Because of the Putin's action, NATO expanded by 2 of the countries, Finland and Sweden, and the border actually between NATO countries and Russia expanded by 2 times. But Putin is totally okay with that. He wasn't attacking Finland, for example. So I would say that Trump here shares absolutely pro-Russian narrative. That's why I don't really like the guy. He doesn't really understand that issue. Alright, as for the Ukrainian frontline updates, we don't have it today from the deep state military map source, but from the other sources we may say that Russia moved a little towards Konstantinovka, that's it. So not a huge advancement of the Russian army, really. I would say that the events are mainly escalating in the Kursk Oblast. So guys, I'm gonna update you with this topic daily. And now please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so you help me a lot, and I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.